Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ECS horizon, watching the massive space station grow larger through the viewing screen. Nexus Prime was unlike anything humanity had ever built. The station stretched for miles in every direction, its crystal and metal surface gleaming under the light of 3 different suns. "First time seeing something like this, Commander?" asked Dr. Lisa Carter as she joined him at the observation deck. The archaeologist had spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering every piece of human history she could find. "Hard to believe we're actually here," Jake replied. After 50 years of isolation following Earth's destruction, humanity had finally received an invitation to join the Galactic Council. The message had arrived at their colony ships just 6 months ago, written in dozens of languages including broken English. The docking procedure took 2 hours. Jake had never seen such complex technology. Robot arms guided their ship into a berth that seemed to reshape itself around the horizon's hull. As they walked through the airlock, Jake felt the weight of representing all of humanity. The corridor beyond was enormous. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved through it with purpose. Jake saw creatures that looked like walking crystals, others that reminded him of giant insects, and some that seemed to float rather than walk. None of them looked human. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," said a voice behind them. Jake turned to see what appeared to be a living tree with glowing leaves. "I am Ambassador Root. I will guide you to the council chambers." The walk took 20 minutes. Ambassador Root explained that the station housed representatives from over 300 species. Most had been part of the Galactic Council for thousands of years. Humanity would be the newest member if they were accepted. "Your species is quite young," Root mentioned as they walked. "Most council members have been spacefaring for millions of years. Your few thousand years of recorded history is brief." Jake felt a chill at those words, but he said nothing. Dr. Carter squeezed his arm in support. The council chambers were breathtaking. The room was shaped like a sphere, with seating arranged in circles that rose up the curved walls. At the center sat 3 massive beings on elevated platforms. Jake recognized them from the files they had studied during the journey. The first was Zethkar of the Vorthak, a crystalline being that stood 12 feet tall. His body was made of what looked like living diamond, and light moved through him in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Vorthak were known as the oldest spacefaring race, with records going back millions of years. Next to him sat Queen Hisara of the Zilani. Her insect-like body was covered in gleaming black armor, and her forearms moved constantly as she communicated with her assistants. The Zilani controlled the largest territory in the galaxy, with hive worlds scattered across thousands of systems. The third figure was harder to see clearly. Wavesinger of the Morvani appeared to be made of living water, contained in a transparent suit. The aquatic beings' homeworlds were ocean planets that humanity had only heard about in stories. "Approach," commanded Zethkar. His voice sounded like breaking glass mixed with wind chimes. "So you are the humans we have heard so little about." Jake stepped forward with Dr. Carter beside him. "I am Commander Jake Morrison, representing the human colonies. With me is Dr. Lisa Carter, our chief historian." "Historian," laughed Queen Hisara. The sound was like clicking metal. "What history could a species so young possibly have to study?" "We have a rich cultural heritage," Dr. Carter said firmly. "Our civilizations have created art, literature, science, and technology that span thousands of years." "Thousands," repeated Zethkar, with what sounded like amusement. "Child, the Vorthak have maintained continuous civilization for 4 million years. Our history books mention the birth and death of stars. What could your brief tribal period possibly offer the galaxy?" Wavesinger spoke for the first time. Their voice was like ocean waves. "The humans lived on one small planet until recently. They have no experience with galactic affairs, no understanding of the greater cosmos." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "We may be new to space travel, but humanity has survived disasters that would have destroyed other species. We've shown creativity and determination that helped us rebuild after losing our homeworld. Losing your world," said Zethkar with what Jake realized was contempt. A truly advanced species would never allow such a thing to happen. The fact that you could not protect even one planet shows how primitive you really are. Dr. Carter stepped forward. "If I may present some evidence of human achievements." She activated a holographic projector she had brought. Images of ancient human cities, artwork, and technology appeared in the air above them. The three council leaders barely glanced at the display. Queen Hysera waved one of her arms dismissively. Local tribal developments. Nothing of galactic significance. These structures required advanced engineering, Dr. Carter protested. The mathematical precision, the artistic vision, the coordination of thousands of workers. Impressive for primitives, interrupted Zethkar, but hardly worthy of council attention. The Vorthak were building continent-spanning cities when your species was still learning to use fire. Jake watched the other council members. None of them seemed interested in what Dr. Carter was showing. Many were having their own conversations or working on other tasks. It was clear that humanity was not being taken seriously. The question before us, announced Wavezinger, is whether this young species deserves even observer status in the council. They have no territory beyond a few colony ships, no significant military power, no contributions to galactic knowledge or culture. They are refugees, added Queen Hysera. Their own planet rejected them so completely that it died. What does this say about their ability to manage resources or maintain civilization? Jake felt his hands clench into fists, but he forced himself to remain calm. Starting a fight here would doom humanity's chances forever. However, said Zethkar after a long pause, the Council has always been generous to lesser species. We propose to grant humanity limited observer status. You may attend council sessions and learn from your betters. Perhaps in a few thousand years you will develop enough to contribute something meaningful. The dismissal was clear. Jake had hoped for partnership and found condescension instead. But he also noticed something strange. During Dr. Carter's presentation, her archaeological scanner had been running. She was holding it now, and its screen was showing readings that made no sense. We accept the Council's generous offer, Jake said formally. Inside, he was already planning their next move. As they left the chambers, Dr. Carter grabbed his arm. Her scanner was beeping softly, and her face was pale with excitement or fear. Jake, she whispered. These readings are impossible. I'm detecting mineral compositions that match Earth's geology. But that's not the strange part. The strange part is where I'm detecting them. Jake looked at the scanner's display. It was showing signals from 3 different locations. All of them were the homeworlds of the Council's ruling species. Something was very wrong with the story they had been told about humanity's place in the galaxy. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ECS horizon, watching the massive space station grow larger through the viewing screen. Nexus Prime was unlike anything humanity had ever built. The station stretched for miles in every direction, its crystalline metal surface gleaming under the light of 3 different suns. First time seeing something like this, Commander? Asked Dr. Lisa Carter as she joined him at the observation deck. The archaeologist had spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering every piece of human history she could find. Hard to believe we're actually here, Jake replied. After 50 years of isolation following Earth's destruction, humanity had finally received an invitation to join the Galactic Council. The message had arrived at their colony ships just 6 months ago, written in dozens of languages including broken English. The docking procedure took 2 hours. Jake had never seen such complex technology. Robot arms guided their ship into a berth that seemed to reshape itself around the horizon's hull. As they walked through the airlock, Jake felt the weight of representing all of humanity. The corridor beyond was enormous. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved through it with purpose. Jake saw creatures that looked like walking crystals, others that reminded him of giant insects, and some that seemed to float rather than walk. None of them looked human. Welcome to Nexus Prime, said a voice behind them. Jake turned to see what appeared to be a living tree with glowing leaves. I am Ambassador Root. I will guide you to the council chambers. The walk took 20 minutes. Ambassador Root explained that the station housed representatives from over 300 species. Most had been part of the Galactic Council for thousands of years. Humanity would be the newest member if they were accepted. Your species is quite young, Root mentioned as they walked. Most council members have been spacefaring for millions of years. Your few thousand years of recorded history is brief. Jake felt a chill at those words, but he said nothing. Dr. Carter squeezed his arm in support. The council chambers were breathtaking. The room was shaped like a sphere, with seating arranged in circles that rose up the curved walls. At the center sat 3 massive beings on elevated platforms. Jake recognized them from the files they had studied during the journey. The first was Zethkar of the Vorthak, a crystalline being that stood 12 feet tall. His body was made of what looked like living diamond, and light moved through him in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Vorthak were known as the oldest spacefaring race, with records going back millions of years. Next to him sat Queen Hisara of the Zelani. Her insect-like body was covered in gleaming black armor, and her forearms moved constantly as she communicated with her assistants. The Zelani controlled the largest territory in the galaxy, with hive worlds scattered across thousands of systems. The third figure was harder to see clearly. Wavesinger of the Morvani appeared to be made of living water contained in a transparent suit. The aquatic beings' homeworlds were ocean planets that humanity had only heard about in stories. "Approach," commanded Zethkar. His voice sounded like breaking glass mixed with wind chimes. "So you are the humans we have heard so little about." Jake stepped forward with Dr. Carter beside him. "I am Commander Jake Morrison, representing the human colonies. With me is Dr. Lisa Carter, our chief historian." "Historian," laughed Queen Hisara. The sound was like clicking metal. What history could a species so young possibly have to study? "We have a rich cultural heritage," Dr. Carter said firmly. "Our civilizations have created art, literature, science, and technology that span thousands of years." "Thousands," repeated Zethkar with what sounded like amusement. "Child, the Vorthak have maintained continuous civilization for 4 million years. Our history books mention the birth and death of stars. What could your brief tribal period possibly offer the galaxy?" Wavesinger spoke for the first time. Their voice was like ocean waves. "The humans lived on one small planet until recently. They have no experience with galactic affairs, no understanding of the greater cosmos." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "We may be new to space travel, but humanity has survived disasters that would have destroyed other species. We've shown creativity and determination that helped us rebuild after losing our homeworld." "Losing your world," said Zethkar with what Jake realized was contempt. "A truly advanced species would never allow such a thing to happen. The fact that you could not protect even one planet shows how primitive you really are." Dr. Carter stepped forward. "If I may present some evidence of human achievements." She activated a holographic projector she had brought. Images of ancient human cities, artwork, and technology appeared in the air above them. The 3 council leaders barely glanced at the display. Queen Hisara waved one of her arms dismissively. "Local tribal developments. Nothing of galactic significance." "These structures required advanced engineering," Dr. Carter protested. "The mathematical precision, the artistic vision, the coordination of thousands of workers." "Impressive for primitives," interrupted Zethkar. "But hardly worthy of council attention. The Vorthak were building continent-spanning cities when your species was still learning to use fire." Jake watched the other council members. None of them seemed interested in what Dr. Carter was showing. Many were having their own conversations or working on other tasks. It was clear that humanity was not being taken seriously. "The question before us," announced Wavesinger, "is whether this young species deserves even observer status in the council. They have no territory beyond a few colony ships, no significant military power, no contributions to galactic knowledge or culture. They are refugees," added Queen Hisara. "Their own planet rejected them so completely that it died. What does this say about their ability to manage resources or maintain civilization?" Jake felt his hands clench into fists, but he forced himself to remain calm. Starting a fight here would doom humanity's chances forever. "However," said Zethkar after a long pause, "the Council has always been generous to lesser species. We propose to grant humanity limited observer status. You may attend Council sessions and learn from your betters. Perhaps in a few thousand years you will develop enough to contribute something meaningful." The dismissal was clear. Jake had hoped for partnership and found condescension instead. But he also noticed something strange. During Dr. Carter's presentation, her archaeological scanner had been running. She was holding it now and its screen was showing readings that made no sense. "We accept the Council's generous offer," Jake said formally. Inside, he was already planning their next move. As they left the chambers, Dr. Carter grabbed his arm. Her scanner was beeping softly, and her face was pale with excitement or fear. "Jake," she whispered, "these readings are impossible. I'm detecting mineral compositions that match Earth's geology. But that's not the strange part. The strange part is where I'm detecting them." Jake looked at the scanner's display. It was showing signals from 3 different locations. All of them were the home worlds of the Council's ruling species. Something was very wrong with the story they had been told about humanity's place in the galaxy. Jake Morrison stared at Dr. Carter's scanner for the 3rd time in 2 hours. The readings had not changed. 3 distinct signals were coming from the home worlds of the Council's most powerful species, and all of them matched Earth's unique geological signature. "This has to be a mistake," said Pete Jackson, the Horizon's chief geologist. He was studying the data on the main computer. "There's no way Earth minerals could be on alien planets millions of light years away. Unless," said Dr. Carter quietly, "Earth materials were transported there somehow, or unless these minerals aren't as unique to Earth as we thought." Jake rubbed his forehead. 3 days had passed since their humiliating reception at the Council chambers. The Horizon was currently docked at Nexus Prime, while Jake tried to figure out their next move. Humanity's observer status gave them access to basic Council databases, but nothing that would explain these strange readings. "There's another possibility," said Amy Rogers, the ship's xenoarchaeologist. "What if we're looking at this backwards? What if Earth materials didn't travel to these worlds? What if they were there first?" The bridge fell silent. Jake looked at the young scientist with surprise. Amy was brilliant but had a habit of making wild theories that turned out to be right. "Explain," Jake said. Amy brought up a star map on the main screen. "Look at the distribution of these signals. They're not random. All 3 worlds are along what we used to call the Great Trade Route, the path our colony ships followed when we left Earth, and they're all on planets that have been continuously inhabited for millions of years." Pete shook his head. "That's impossible. Humans have only been in space for 200 years. Before that, we were stuck on Earth." "According to our records," Amy said. "But what if our records are wrong? What if we lost information during the disasters that destroyed Earth? What if humanity has been in space much longer than we know?" Dr. Carter was nodding slowly. "There are gaps in our historical records. Entire civilizations that we only know about from ruins and artifacts. We always assumed they were destroyed by wars or natural disasters on Earth. But what if they weren't destroyed?" Amy continued. "What if they left Earth and went to other worlds? What if the humans who stayed behind simply forgot about the ones who left?" Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The theory was wild, but it would explain the scanner readings. It would also explain something else that had been bothering him since their arrival at Nexus Prime. "The Council leaders," he said slowly. When Dr. Carter was showing them human achievements, they barely looked. It was like they already knew what they would see. "Or like they'd seen it before," added Dr. Carter. Jake made a decision that would change everything. "We're going to investigate. Quietly. The Council made it clear that we're not welcome to explore their space. But they didn't forbid it entirely." "Commander," said Pete nervously, "if we're caught snooping around alien homeworlds, they could ban humanity from Council space forever. And if we don't investigate," Jake replied, "we'll never know the truth about our own history." "Amy, how long would it take to reach the Vorthak homeworld?" 4 days at maximum jump speed. "But Jake, we'd need permission to enter their space, and they'd want to know why we're coming." Jake smiled grimly. "Then we don't ask permission, and we make sure they don't know we're coming." The Horizon left Nexus Prime 12 hours later. Jake had filed a flight plan showing they were returning to human colony space. Once they were clear of the station's sensors, they changed course for Vorthak Prime. The journey gave them time to plan. Dr. Carter and Amy worked together to identify the most promising locations for investigation. The scanner readings were strongest on Vorthak Prime's southern continent, in an area that was supposed to be uninhabited desert. "Strange," Amy muttered as she studied the planetary surveys. "The Vorthak have cities everywhere else on the planet. Why would they leave such a large area completely empty?" "Maybe it's not suitable for their kind of life," suggested Pete. "Or maybe," said Dr. Carter, "there's something there they don't want disturbed." When they reached Vorthak Prime, Jake ordered the ship to stay at the edge of the system while he took a small team down in a shuttle. The plan was simple: land in the desert area, do a quick archaeological survey, and get out before anyone noticed them. The team consisted of Jake, Dr. Carter, Amy, and Pete. They wore environmental suits designed to protect them from the alien atmosphere and keep their life signs hidden from Vorthak sensors. The desert was unlike anything they had seen before. The sand was made of tiny crystal fragments that sparkled in the light of the system's twin suns. In the distance, they could see the spires of a Vorthak city, but the immediate area seemed completely empty. Dr. Carter's scanner was going crazy. The signals are incredibly strong here. Whatever we're looking for is right under our feet. They set up a portable drilling rig and began to dig. The crystal sand was hard to work with, but after 2 hours, they hit something solid. Amy used a brush to carefully clear away the sand, revealing what looked like worked stone. "This isn't Vorthak construction," she said excitedly. "The proportions are all wrong. This was built for bipedal beings about 6 feet tall." They dug for 6 more hours, working in shifts. What they found made no sense. Buried under tons of crystal sand was a structure that could have been built by humans. The doorways were the right size. The steps were the right height. Even the decorative carvings looked familiar. "This looks like Mesopotamian architecture," Dr. Carter whispered. "But that's impossible. Mesopotamia was on Earth thousands of years ago." Jake was studying a piece of carved stone Amy had uncovered. The symbols on it were definitely human in origin. Not modern human writing, but something that looked like ancient cuneiform mixed with Egyptian hieroglyphs. "There's more," said Pete from deeper in the excavation. "You need to see this." They followed him down into what appeared to be a buried chamber. Pete's flashlight illuminated walls covered in paintings. The style was primitive but clearly human. The paintings showed humans working alongside tall crystalline beings that looked exactly like modern Vorthak. But these paintings were old. Very old. Carbon dating would be needed to be sure, but Amy estimated they were at least 10,000 years old. Possibly much older. "This doesn't make sense," Jake muttered. "Humans weren't on other planets 10,000 years ago. We weren't even building cities on Earth back then." Dr. Carter was running her scanner over the paintings. "Jake, I'm detecting organic compounds in the paint. Compounds that match Earth biology. Human DNA markers." Before Jake could respond, alarms started beeping on all their equipment. Vorthak patrol ships were approaching their location. "We have to go," Jake said. "Now." They grabbed what artifacts they could carry and ran for the shuttle. As they lifted off, Jake could see Vorthak aircraft converging on their digging site. They had been discovered. The flight back to the horizon was tense. Jake expected to be intercepted at any moment, but somehow they made it back to their ship without being caught. As soon as they were aboard, Jake ordered an immediate jump to safety. In the hours that followed, as they analyzed what they had found, Jake realized that everything humanity thought it knew about its own history might be wrong. The artifacts they had recovered were definitely human in origin, but they were far older than human space travel was supposed to be. More disturbing was the fact that the Vorthak had clearly known about the buried human settlement and had chosen to bury it rather than study it. That suggested they were hiding something about humanity's past. Jake made another decision. If there were human ruins on Vorthak Prime, there might be similar sites on the other Council worlds. They were going to find out. "Set course for Zalani space," he ordered. "It's time we learned the truth about who we really are." Dr. Carter was still studying the artifacts they had recovered. "Jake, if these readings are accurate, humans were building interstellar settlements thousands of years before our official first contact with alien life. That means someone has been lying to us about our own history," Jake finished, "and I intend to find out who." Captain Roy Bennett crouched in the darkness of the Zalani tunnel system, trying not to think about the millions of insect-like aliens living in the hive cities above him. His team had been underground for 8 hours, following scanner readings that grew stronger with every mile they traveled deeper. "How much further?" whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's archaeological specialist. She was carrying equipment that would help them analyze whatever they found in these forgotten tunnels. "Scanner shows the main concentration is about half a mile ahead," replied Bennett. His team consisted of 4 people. Himself, Dr. Kim, engineer Danny Walsh, and communications specialist Linda Torres. They were all volunteers who understood the risks of this unauthorized exploration. Above them, the planet Zalani Prime buzzed with activity. The insectoid aliens had built vast hive cities that housed billions of their kind. But down here in the ancient tunnel system, everything was quiet and old and strange. Jake Morrison had sent Bennett's team to Zalani space while he took another group to investigate the Morvani worlds. The plan was to search for more evidence of ancient human presence in Council territory. What they had found on Vorthak Prime suggested that humans had been living throughout the galaxy much longer than anyone knew. "Look at this," said Danny, shining his light on the tunnel walls. The construction technique is completely different from what we see in the modern Zilani structures above us. Dr. Kim examined the stonework carefully. The proportions are wrong for insectoid builders. These passages were designed for bipedal beings, human-sized beings. They had entered the tunnel system through an abandoned mine shaft on the edge of a Zilani city. The official records claimed the tunnels were natural cave systems that had been sealed because they were unstable. But the more they explored, the more obvious it became that these tunnels had been built by intelligent beings. "Movement ahead," warned Linda, checking her motion sensors. Something big. The team froze and turned off their lights. In the darkness, they could hear the sound of something moving through the tunnel ahead of them. It sounded like multiple legs clicking against stone, but the pattern was wrong for a Zilani. After 10 minutes, the sound faded away. They turned their lights back on and continued forward more carefully. "What do you think that was?" asked Danny. "Probably some kind of native wildlife," Bennett replied, but he didn't sound convinced. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took their breath away. The ceiling stretched up beyond the reach of their flashlights, and the walls were covered with structures that looked like they had been carved from living rock. But these weren't Zilani structures. The architectural style was completely different. The doorways and windows were sized for creatures about 6 feet tall, not the 8-foot insectoids that ruled the planet's surface. "This is incredible," whispered Dr. Kim. "This whole complex predates the Zilani civilization by thousands of years." They split up to explore the chamber, staying in radio contact. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic history. Bennett discovered living quarters that were clearly designed for humans. The beds, chairs, and tables were all the right size and shape. More importantly, the walls were covered with paintings that showed humans and early Zilani living together peacefully. "These paintings tell a story," Dr. Kim said when she joined him. "Look at this sequence. It shows humans teaching the Zilani how to use tools, how to build structures, how to organize their society." Danny found something even more remarkable in a side chamber. "You all need to see this," he called over the radio. "I've found some kind of workshop or laboratory." They gathered around tables covered with instruments and devices that were clearly of human origin. The technology was more advanced than anything modern humanity possessed, but the design principles were recognizably human. "Look at these," said Linda, pointing to symbols carved into the workshop walls. "Those are definitely human characters, but not any language I recognize." Dr. Kim was studying the symbols with intense concentration. "It looks like a mixture of different human writing systems. Ancient ones. This symbol here is similar to Sanskrit. This one looks like early Chinese characters, and this section reminds me of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. How is that possible?" Bennett asked. "Those writing systems developed on different continents on Earth over thousands of years. Unless they all developed from a common source," Dr. Kim replied. "A source that existed before they were brought to Earth. They spent hours documenting everything they could find. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans had not only been on Zilani Prime thousands of years ago, they had been the teachers and guides of early Zilani civilization. But the most disturbing discovery came when they found what appeared to be a historical record carved into one of the chamber's walls. The symbols were faded and damaged, but Dr. Kim was able to translate parts of it. "It's a warning," she said quietly. "It says something about betrayal and danger. The humans who built this place knew something bad was going to happen to them." "What kind of danger?" Bennett asked. "The text is damaged, but I can make out references to the crystal beings and water swimmers, joining with the hive builders to eliminate the threat of human expansion." Bennett felt cold. Crystal beings, water swimmers, hive builders. Those descriptions matched the 3 species that now ruled the Galactic Council. Before he could ask Dr. Kim to translate more, Linda's communication equipment started beeping urgently. "We've got company," she announced. "Multiple life forms approaching our position. Big ones." The team quickly gathered their equipment and the most important artifacts they had found. As they prepared to leave, Bennett took one last look around the ancient human settlement. "How many places like this are there?" he wondered aloud. "Probably hundreds," Dr. Kim replied. "Maybe thousands. The question is, why were they all abandoned? And why doesn't anyone remember them?" They made their way back through the tunnel system as quickly as possible, but they were not alone. The sounds of pursuit followed them through the darkness. Whatever lived in these tunnels now, it didn't want them there. They reached the surface just as Zilani patrol aircraft began circling the area. Bennett's shuttle was hidden in a canyon several miles away, but getting there without being detected would be challenging. "This is getting to be a habit," Danny muttered as they ran across the alien landscape. "First Vorthak Prime, now here. At least we know we're on the right track," Bennett replied. "Someone definitely doesn't want these sites investigated." They reached their shuttle and launched immediately, hoping to escape the planet before being intercepted. As they climbed toward orbit, Bennett sent a coded message to Jake Morrison on the horizon. The message was simple: "Found extensive human settlement. Evidence of cooperation between species. Also found evidence of planned betrayal. Council species may have been involved in eliminating ancient human presence. Returning to rendezvous point." Meanwhile, on the aquatic world of Morvani Prime, Commander Kate Sullivan was making her own disturbing discoveries in the deep ocean trenches. Her team had found the ruins of what appeared to be a massive underwater research facility, complete with technology that was far more advanced than anything modern humanity had developed. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. In the deepest part of the facility, they found a sealed vault containing data storage devices that had survived thousands of years underwater. When they finally managed to access the data, they found records that would change everything humanity thought it knew about its own history. The truth about humanity's past was finally beginning to emerge, and it was more incredible and more terrible than anyone had imagined. As Bennett's shuttle jumped to hyperspace, carrying precious evidence of humanity's forgotten heritage, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by forces that had worked for thousands of years to keep these secrets buried. The question now was whether they could uncover the whole truth before those same forces moved to silence them permanently. Commander Kate Sullivan stood on the deck of the research submarine Deep Explorer, watching the dark waters of Morvani Prime's vast ocean stretch endlessly in all directions. The aquatic world was covered entirely by water that reached depths of over 50 miles in some places. Somewhere far below them, the scanner reading suggested the presence of structures that shouldn't exist. "Depth reading shows 23,000 feet to the target zone," reported Lieutenant Chris Parker, the mission's technical specialist. "Water pressure down there will crush any standard equipment we have." Sullivan nodded. Her team had spent 2 days modifying their deep-sea gear to handle the extreme conditions of Morvani Prime's ocean trenches. The work was dangerous enough without considering that they were operating without permission in the home territory of one of the galaxy's most powerful species. "Atmospheric readings?" Sullivan asked. "The water is breathable for Morvani, but toxic to humans," replied Dr. Janet Moore, the team's marine biologist. "One breach in our suits and we're dead in minutes." The fourth member of their team, archaeologist Dr. Paul Grant, was studying sonar readings on his equipment. "Whatever's down there is huge. The structure extends for miles in every direction." Sullivan made the decision to proceed. Jake Morrison was counting on her team to find evidence of ancient human presence on Morvani Prime, just as other teams were investigating Vorthak and Zilani space. The scanner readings they had detected from orbit suggested that something significant was buried in the deepest ocean trenches. The descent took 4 hours. As they went deeper, the water around them grew darker and stranger. Creatures swam past their lights that looked like nothing in Earth's oceans. Some were clearly native to this world, but others seemed almost mechanical in their precision and movement. "Those aren't natural life forms," Dr. Moore observed, watching a group of metallic-looking creatures swim in perfect formation. "They move like machines." "Autonomous systems," suggested Chris. "Maybe left over from whatever civilization built the structures we're looking for." At 18,000 feet, their sonar began detecting solid structures ahead. At 22,000 feet, their lights illuminated the edge of what could only be described as an underwater city. But this was no Morvani city. The architecture was wrong for the aquatic aliens. The buildings were designed with air pockets and chambers that would only make sense for beings who breathed atmosphere, not water. "This is incredible," Dr. Grant breathed into his communicator. "The construction style is completely unlike anything the Morvani build. This was designed for air-breathing beings." They landed their submarine on what appeared to be a landing pad that had been built specifically for such vehicles. The platform was made of a metal that showed no signs of corrosion, despite being underwater for thousands of years. Atmospheric readings inside the nearest structure show breathable air, Chris reported. Somehow these buildings are maintaining air pockets even at this depth. They entered the nearest building through what was clearly an airlock system. Inside, they found themselves in a vast complex that stretched far beyond the reach of their lights. The corridors and rooms were sized perfectly for human beings. The technology here is incredible, Chris said, examining control panels that were still functioning after millennia underwater. Power systems, environmental controls, communication equipment. All of it more advanced than anything we have today. Dr. Grant was studying symbols carved into the walls. These are definitely human characters, but the language is unlike any human writing system I've seen before. It's as if someone took elements from dozens of different Earth languages and combined them into something new. They spent hours exploring the facility. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about human technological development. The equipment they discovered was not just more advanced than modern human technology. It operated on principles that human science was only beginning to understand. "Look at this," Dr. Moore called from a laboratory section. "These appear to be biological research stations. But the specimens they were studying weren't from Earth. They were studying native life forms from multiple different planets, including this one," added Dr. Grant, pointing to preserved samples that were clearly from Morvani Prime's ocean ecosystem. The humans who built this place weren't just visitors. They were conducting long-term research into alien life forms. The most significant discovery came when they found what appeared to be a central data storage facility. The room was filled with crystalline storage devices that were still active after thousands of years. "These storage systems are still functional," Chris reported, "but the access protocols are incredibly complex. It's going to take time to figure out how to read them." While Chris worked on accessing the data systems, Sullivan and the others continued exploring. What they found in the deeper sections of the facility was even more disturbing. "This section looks like living quarters," Sullivan observed, "but not temporary quarters. These were designed for people who plan to stay here for years, possibly decades." Dr. Grant was examining personal items left behind by the facility's former inhabitants. Children's toys, family photos. This wasn't just a research station. This was a colony. Families lived here. Then where did they go? Dr. Moore asked. The answer came when Chris finally managed to access one of the data storage devices. The holographic display that appeared above the crystal showed a human woman in what appeared to be a laboratory coat. "If you are seeing this message," the woman said, "then our worst fears have been realized. My name is Dr. Helen Grant, and I am recording this on what may be the last day of human presence in this part of the galaxy." The team gathered around the display as the message continued. "We have learned that the alliance between the crystal beings, the hive builders, and the swimmers is real. They have been systematically destroying human settlements throughout the galaxy. Our colonies on 47 worlds have already fallen. Our homeworlds have been attacked." Sullivan felt cold. Crystal beings, hive builders, swimmers. The woman was describing the species that now ruled the Galactic Council. "We are not strong enough to fight them directly," Dr. Helen Grant continued. "Our technology is more advanced, but they have numbers and coordination that we cannot match. The decision has been made to evacuate all remaining human populations to hidden worlds where we can survive until we are strong enough to return." The hologram flickered, and the woman's face showed signs of stress and exhaustion. "This facility contains complete records of human technological and scientific achievements. We are leaving this information hidden in the hope that our descendants will someday find it and use it to reclaim our place in the galaxy. The coordinates for the primary refuge world are included in these files. The survivors will attempt to reach a small planet in an isolated system. We are calling this world Earth, after the ancient human word for soil and ground." Sullivan's mind reeled. Earth wasn't humanity's origin world. It was their refuge, the place they had fled to escape genocide. "We do not know if we will survive," the message continued. "But if human civilization does continue, it must remember what was lost here. The galaxy was once filled with human colonies, human art, human science. We were the teachers and explorers who helped younger species develop their own civilizations." The hologram paused, and Dr. Helen Grant looked directly at the camera. "If you are human and you are seeing this message, then you are the descendants of survivors. You are the inheritors of a legacy that spans thousands of worlds and millions of years. Do not let our sacrifice be forgotten." The message ended, leaving Sullivan's team in stunned silence. "Earth was never our home world," Dr. Moore said quietly. "It was where we hid after losing everything else." "And the council species," added Dr. Grant. "They're the ones who drove us there. They committed genocide against the entire human species." Chris was accessing more files from the storage system. "There's more here. Technical specifications, star charts, historical records. This is everything humanity lost when Earth was destroyed." Sullivan realized the implications immediately. Modern humanity wasn't a young species taking its first steps into the galaxy. They were the descendants of refugees from one of the galaxy's oldest and most advanced civilizations. "We need to get this information back to Commander Morrison immediately," she decided. "This changes everything." As they prepared to leave the underwater facility, Sullivan looked back at the ancient human colony one last time. Thousands of years ago, her ancestors had lived and worked in these rooms. They had been explorers and scientists and teachers who had helped shape galactic civilization. Now it was time for their descendants to reclaim that legacy. The journey back to the surface was tense. Morvani patrol ships had been searching the area, and getting off the planet without detection would be challenging. But Sullivan knew they had to succeed. The information they carried would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the galaxy. More importantly, it would give humanity the knowledge it needed to confront the species that had tried to destroy them once before. Jake Morrison sat in the conference room aboard the Horizon, staring at the evidence spread across the table before him. 3 weeks had passed since his teams had returned from their unauthorized missions to the Council worlds. What they had discovered would change everything humanity thought it knew about itself. Captain Roy, Bennett had brought back artifacts and recordings from Zilani, Prime showing humans living peacefully with early insectoid civilizations thousands of years ago. Commander Kate Sullivan had returned with data crystals containing the complete technological and historical records of ancient human civilization, hidden in an underwater facility on Morvani Prime. Most shocking of all was Dr. Helen Grant's message. The woman in the hologram was clearly human, but she spoke of events that had happened long before modern human space travel was supposed to exist. "The evidence is undeniable," said Dr. Lisa Carter, who had spent days analyzing everything the teams had recovered. "Human civilization in this galaxy is thousands of years older than our official records indicate. We weren't newcomers to space travel. We were one of the first species to develop interstellar flight." Amy Rogers was working with data from the Morvani facility, trying to piece together the timeline of ancient human expansion. According to these records, humans had established colonies on over 400 worlds by the time this crisis began. We had peaceful relations with dozens of species, including the ancestors of the current council members. "Then what happened?" Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Betrayal," Bennett said simply. "The evidence from Zilani Prime shows that the relationship between humans and the other species changed dramatically about 12,000 years ago. The cooperative settlements were abandoned suddenly." Dr. Carter activated a holographic display showing star maps from the ancient human records. "Look at this progression. Human colonies throughout this entire sector of the galaxy went dark over a period of just a few decades. Not gradually, not due to natural disasters or resource depletion. They were systematically destroyed." "By who?" asked Sullivan, though she also knew the answer. "By the same 3 species that now rule the Galactic Council," Amy replied. "The Vorthak, the Zilani, and the Morvani. They formed an alliance specifically to eliminate human presence from the galaxy." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "They committed genocide, and then they pretended we were a young species just discovering space travel." "It gets worse," Dr. Carter continued. "According to Dr. Helen Grant's records, the Council species didn't just destroy human colonies. They appropriated human technology and scientific knowledge. Much of what they claim as their own ancient achievements were actually stolen from humans." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The species that had dismissed humanity as primitive youngsters had built their entire civilization on stolen human knowledge. "There's more," Sullivan added quietly. She activated another holographic display, this one showing the message Dr. Helen Grant had recorded in her final days. The survivors who escaped to Earth weren't just refugees. They were carrying the complete scientific and cultural heritage of human civilization. Jake watched the hologram of Dr. Helen Grant explaining how the surviving humans had chosen to hide on a small planet in an isolated system. Earth hadn't been humanity's birth world. It had been their sanctuary. The modern human colonies, Dr. Carter said. We're not exploring the galaxy for the first time. We're returning to our ancestral home. Which explains why the Council was so dismissive when we first made contact, Bennett realized. They knew exactly who we were. They've been waiting for thousands of years to see if any humans survived. Jake made a decision that would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. We're going to expose this, all of it. The Council has built their entire power structure on lies and genocide. Jake, Dr. Carter said carefully, if we reveal this information, it could start a war. The Council species outnumber modern humanity by billions to one. Then we better make sure we're not fighting alone, Jake replied. According to these records, humans weren't the only species the Council eliminated. They've been systematically destroying or enslaving younger civilizations for thousands of years. Amy was studying the star charts from the ancient human database. Look at this. The records showed dozens of species that had developed space travel during the human period. Most of them are listed as extinct in current Council databases. But some might have survived, Sullivan suggested. If humans managed to hide on Earth, maybe others found refuge worlds too. Jake's mind was racing. We need to find them. And we need to find the other human colonies that Dr. Helen Grant mentioned. The message said they were establishing multiple refuge worlds. The coordinates are in the database, Dr. Carter confirmed. At least 17 different locations where human survivors might have established hidden colonies. Then that's where we start, Jake decided. We gather every human survivor we can find. We collect evidence from every hidden archaeological site, and then we present the truth to the entire galaxy. Bennett looked concerned. The Council won't just stand by and let us expose them. Once they realize what we've discovered, they'll try to silence us permanently. Let them try, Jake said grimly. According to these records, humans had technology that was centuries ahead of what the Council species possessed. Some of that technology might still be recoverable. Dr. Carter was examining technical specifications from the Morvani facility. Jake, the weapons systems described in these files are beyond anything modern humanity has developed. If we could locate and reactivate even a fraction of these ancient facilities, we'd have a fighting chance, Jake finished. Not just to survive, but to reclaim what was stolen from us. Sullivan was studying the holographic message from Dr. Helen Grant. She said something else that's important. The humans who built these facilities weren't just technologically advanced. They were teachers and explorers who helped other species develop their own civilizations. Which means there might be other species out there who remember the truth, Amy added. Species that the Council has been suppressing or controlling. Jake felt a plan forming in his mind. It was dangerous and ambitious, but it might be humanity's only chance to reclaim their rightful place in the galaxy. We're going to do this in stages, he announced. First, we locate the other human survivor colonies. We need to reunite our people and share this information with all human settlements. Second, we find and reactivate as many of the ancient human facilities as possible. We need that technology. And third? Asked Bennett. Third, we gather evidence from every archaeological site we can find. Then we broadcast the truth to every species in the galaxy. We show them what the Council really is, and we invite them to join us in building a better galactic civilization. Dr. Carter looked worried. Jake, once we start down this path, there's no going back. The Council will never allow us to exist peacefully with this knowledge. Then we better make sure we win, Jake replied. Our ancestors built a civilization that spanned hundreds of worlds. They created technology that transformed entire species. They were teachers and explorers and builders. He looked around the room at his team. We're their descendants. It's time we remembered who we really are. The horizon changed course for the first set of coordinates Dr. Helen Grant had provided. Somewhere in the vast galaxy, other human survivors were waiting. Ancient technology was hidden in forgotten facilities. And the truth about humanity's past was finally ready to emerge from thousands of years of enforced silence. Jake Morrison had set events in motion that would reshape the galaxy. The only question now was whether humanity would be strong enough to survive what was coming. The horizon emerged from hyperspace at the edge of an unmarked star system, following coordinates that Dr. Helen Grant had recorded 12,000 years ago. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching long-range scanners search for any sign of human presence in the system. Third planet shows atmospheric readings compatible with human life, reported Lieutenant Alex Chen from the sensor station. detecting artificial electromagnetic signatures that suggest technological civilization. Jake felt hope and nervousness in equal measure. This was the fifth system they had investigated based on coordinates from the ancient database. The first four had been empty, showing only the remains of long-dead colonies that had not survived the millennia. "Any response to our standard human greeting broadcasts?" Jake asked. Communications Officer Maria Santos shook her head. "Nothing yet, Commander. But if there are survivors here, they might be maintaining communication silence for security reasons." Dr. Lisa Carter joined Jake at the command station. Over the past month, she had become their expert on ancient human civilization. According to Dr. Helen Grant's notes, this system was chosen as a refuge site because of its isolation and defensive position. If humans did survive here, they would have spent thousands of years preparing for the possibility that the Council might find them. "Which means they might not welcome visitors," added Amy Rogers. "Even human visitors." Jake made the decision to approach cautiously. "Take us into the system, but stay at maximum sensor range from the third planet. I want to know everything about what we're dealing with before we make contact." As they moved deeper into the system, the scanner readings became more detailed and more surprising. The third planet showed signs of a highly advanced technological civilization. Cities covered 3 continents and orbital installations surrounded the planet like a protective shell. "Commander," Alex said with excitement in his voice, "I'm detecting energy signatures that match the technology we found in the Morvani facility. This isn't just a human colony. This is a civilization that maintained and developed the ancient human technology. The answer to their presence came not from the planet, but from space around them." Jake's tactical display suddenly showed dozens of ships materializing from what had appeared to be empty space. "We're surrounded," reported Bennett, who was manning the weapons station. 12 vessels, configuration unknown. They were using some kind of cloaking technology. Before Jake could respond, his communication system activated. A woman's voice filled the bridge, speaking in accented but recognizable English. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately. You are in violation of protected space. State your origins and intentions or you will be destroyed." Jake stepped forward to the communications panel. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Colonial Ship Horizon. We are humans seeking contact with other human survivors." There was a long pause before the voice responded. "Earth Colonial Ship? That designation has not been used for over 10,000 years. Transmit your genetic and historical identification codes." Dr. Carter quickly accessed the ancient database they had recovered. "The codes should be in Dr. Helen Grant's files," she said, working frantically to find the right information. "Transmitting identification codes now," Jake announced, hoping the ancient protocols would still be recognized. Another pause, longer this time. Then the voice came back and Jake could hear the change in tone. "Codes confirmed. You are descendants of the Earth refugees. Welcome home, cousins. This is Admiral Rachel Stone of the Terran Republic Defense Fleet. We have been waiting for you for a very long time." 2 hours later, Jake found himself in the council chambers of New Terra, the capital city of the Terran Republic. The planet's human population had grown to over 2 billion people during their isolation, and they had built a civilization that was both familiar and alien to the Earth. Colonist Admiral Stone was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent her life preparing for war. Around the conference table sat the leaders of the Terran Republic, and Jake was amazed by what they had accomplished. "We know why you're here," Admiral Stone said without preamble. "Our long-range sensors detected the destruction of Earth 3 years ago. We also monitored your first contact with the Council species and your subsequent investigations of the hidden archaeological sites." Jake was surprised. "You've been watching us?" "We've been watching everything," replied Dr. Marcus Webb, the Republic's chief historian. "For 12,000 years, we've maintained surveillance networks throughout Council space. We know about every human artifact they've buried, every piece of evidence they've destroyed." "Then you know the truth about what happened to our original civilization," Dr. Carter said. "We know more than the truth," Admiral Stone replied grimly. "We know what they're planning to do next." She activated a holographic display that showed current movements of Council fleets throughout the galaxy. The Vorthak, Zelani, and Morvani have been preparing for the possibility that human survivors might eventually return to challenge them. They've spent thousands of years building a military alliance designed specifically to eliminate any remaining human presence. Jake studied the fleet dispositions. The numbers were overwhelming. How many ships do they have? Combined, the Council species control over 50,000 warships, Admiral Stone replied. They also have defensive installations on thousands of worlds and complete control over galactic trade and communication networks. And how many ships do we have? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. The Terran Republic maintains a fleet of 800 vessels, Admiral Stone said. We also have 23 hidden colonies scattered throughout the galaxy, with a combined human population of about 30 billion people. Jake felt despair creeping in. Even with 30 billion humans and 800 ships, they were vastly outnumbered by the Council forces. However, Dr. Webb continued, we have advantages that the Council doesn't know about. We've spent 12,000 years developing technology based on the original human scientific databases. Our ships and weapons are centuries ahead of anything the Council species possess. Admiral Stone smiled grimly. We've also maintained contact with other species that the Council has oppressed over the millennia. We're not alone in wanting to see their power structure destroyed. She activated another display, this one showing a star map with dozens of marked systems. These are the locations of hidden colonies belonging to species that the Council claimed were extinct. Like us, they've been waiting for the right moment to return and reclaim what was stolen from them. Jake began to see hope where there had been only despair. You're talking about a galactic revolution. We're talking about justice, Admiral Stone corrected. The Council species built their empire on genocide and lies. They've suppressed technological and cultural development throughout the galaxy for thousands of years. It's time to restore the balance. Dr. Carter was studying the strategic information displayed around the room. What about the other human colonies that Dr. Helen Grant mentioned? Have you been in contact with them? Most of them, Dr. Webb replied. 17 human colonies survived the initial exodus. 14 are still active, with populations ranging from a few million to several billion. We've been coordinating our development and planning for this moment. What moment? Jake asked. Admiral Stone looked directly at him. The moment when the Earth survivors returned to the galaxy and made contact with the Council. Your arrival has triggered protocols that have been in place for 12,000 years. Every hidden human colony, every oppressed species, every resistance movement that has been waiting for this opportunity is now preparing for coordinated action. Jake realized the magnitude of what was being discussed. You're planning to overthrow the Galactic Council. We're planning to restore the galaxy to what it was before the Council's reign of terror began, Admiral Stone corrected. A place where species cooperate and learn from each other, instead of being dominated by a handful of ancient empires. When? Jake asked. Admiral Stone checked a display showing fleet movements and communication intercepts. Soon. The Council has realized that you've discovered their secrets. They're mobilizing their fleets to eliminate all human presence in the galaxy permanently. We estimate they'll begin their offensive within 6 months. Then we have 6 months to prepare, Jake said. We have 6 months to win, Admiral Stone corrected. Because if we lose this time, there won't be any human survivors to carry on the fight. Jake looked around the room at the faces of people who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. Their ancestors had fled to this hidden world to preserve human civilization. Now their descendants were ready to reclaim their place among the stars. What do you need from us? Jake asked. We need you to help us contact the other Earth colonial fleets, Admiral Stone replied. And we need you to help us reveal the truth about human history to the entire galaxy. When the fighting begins, every species needs to understand what they're really fighting for. Jake nodded. The mission had changed from exploration and discovery to something much larger and more dangerous. But for the first time since leaving Earth, he felt like humanity had a real chance to build the future they deserved. The galaxy was about to change forever. Jake Morrison stood in the command center of New Terra's orbital defense station, watching holographic displays show the movement of fleets across the galaxy. 3 months had passed since his first meeting with Admiral Rachel Stone, and the hidden human colonies were finally working together for the first time in 12,000 years. Status report from the Centauri Republic, announced Captain Diana Foster from the communications station. Their fleet of 200 ships is ready for deployment. They've also activated the ancient weapon platforms that were hidden in the asteroid belts around their primary worlds. Admiral Stone nodded as she studied the tactical displays. That brings our combined fleet strength to over 1,500 vessels, still outnumbered 30 to 1. but our technological advantages should help balance the odds. Jake was amazed by what the scattered human colonies had accomplished during their isolation. Each group had developed along different paths, but all had maintained the advanced technology that their ancestors had possessed 12,000 years ago. What about our allies from the other species? Jake asked. Dr. Marcus Webb answered from his position at the intelligence station. The Cathara Confederation has agreed to provide 300 ships. The Solari Collective is contributing 200 vessels. The various smaller species that survived Council oppression are adding another 500 ships to our forces. And the information war? Admiral Stone asked. Dr. Lisa Carter, who had been working with New Terra's information specialists, activated a display showing communication networks throughout the galaxy. We're ready to broadcast the complete historical records to every inhabited system simultaneously. The evidence of Council genocide and theft will reach over 10,000 worlds at once. The plan that had developed over 3 months was ambitious and dangerous. The human colonies and their allies would launch coordinated strikes against Council military installations while simultaneously revealing the truth about galactic history to every species in the galaxy. The key, Admiral Stone explained to Jake, is timing. We need to cripple the Council's ability to suppress information while giving every species the knowledge they need to make their own choices about the future. Jake studied the battle plans that covered the walls of the command center. What about civilian casualties? The Council worlds have billions of innocent people. We're not targeting civilian populations, Admiral Stone assured him. Our strikes will focus on military installations, government centers, and communication hubs. The goal is to eliminate the Council's ability to maintain control, not to commit genocide like they did to us. Captain Roy Bennett, who had been working with the Terran Republic's military planners, approached with the final operational schedules. All human colonies are reporting ready status. The coordinated attack will begin in 72 hours. Jake felt the weight of history pressing down on him. In 3 days, humanity would either reclaim its place in the galaxy or be destroyed forever. There's one more thing, Dr. Webb said quietly. Our intelligence networks have intercepted Council communications. They know we've been gathering forces. Speaker Zethkar has convinced the other Council leaders that humanity represents an existential threat to their civilization. Admiral Stone's expression hardened. What are they planning? Complete sterilization, Dr. Webb replied. They're preparing to destroy every world that has ever had human presence. Not just current colonies, but every planet where humans lived in ancient times. They want to eliminate every trace of human existence from the galaxy. The command center fell silent. Jake realized that the Council wasn't just planning to win a war. They were planning to finish the genocide they had started 12,000 years ago. How long before they can implement this plan? Admiral Stone asked. 2 weeks, Dr. Webb replied. Maybe less. Admiral Stone looked around the room at her officers and advisors. Then we move up our timeline. The attack begins tomorrow. The next 24 hours were filled with frantic preparations. Jake worked with communication teams to coordinate the information, broadcasts that would reveal the truth about human history to the galaxy. Dr. Carter and Amy Rogers prepared the archaeological evidence that would prove the Council's crimes. Meanwhile, Admiral Stone coordinated with the other human colonies and allied species to ensure that every part of the plan would execute simultaneously. Remember, she told the assembled fleet commanders during their final briefing, we're not just fighting for human survival. We're fighting for the right of every species to determine its own future free from Council domination. Jake was assigned command of a squadron of Earth colonial ships that would participate in the attack on Nexus Prime, the Council's central command station. His orders were to disable the station's communication systems and capture the central archives that contained 12,000 years of suppressed historical records. Nervous? Asked Dr. Carter as they prepared to board their ships. Terrified, Jake admitted, but also excited. For the first time since we left Earth, I feel like we're taking control of our own destiny, instead of just reacting to what others do to us. The attack began at exactly Oro 800 Galactic Standard Time. Across hundreds of star systems, human and allied fleets emerged from hyperspace simultaneously. The Council forces were caught completely off guard by the coordination and scale of the assault. Jake watched his tactical display as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The ancient weapon platforms that the human colonies had maintained were proving devastatingly effective against Council ships. Technology that was 12,000 years more advanced than anything the Council possessed was destroying entire fleets. Nexus Prime in range, reported Lieutenant Alex Chen from the sensor station. Station defenses are activating. Jake could see the massive space station ahead of them, surrounded by a defensive fleet of over 200 Council warships. It looked impossible to overcome, but Jake had learned not to underestimate human determination. Begin the information broadcast, Jake ordered. Throughout the galaxy, the complete records of human civilization and Council crimes began transmitting to every inhabited world. The battle for Nexus Prime was fierce but brief. The Council ships were no match for human technology, and within hours the station was secured. Jake led a boarding party to the Central Archives, where they found records that documented 12,000 years of systematic oppression. "My God," breathed Dr. Carter as she accessed the Council databases. "They didn't just commit genocide against humans. They've been systematically destroying or enslaving every species that showed potential for independent development." Meanwhile, reports from across the galaxy showed that the coordinated attacks were succeeding beyond all expectations. Council military forces were being destroyed or surrendering throughout their territory. More importantly, the information broadcasts were having their intended effect. On world after world, populations were rising up against Council control once they learned the truth about their history. "Admiral Stone to all commanders," came the voice over the communication system. "Phase 1 is complete. All primary targets have been secured. Council military resistance is collapsing." Jake felt a surge of hope, but he knew the war was far from over. The Council leaders were still alive, and they would not give up their power easily. "What about Vorthak Prime?" Jake asked. "Secure," Admiral Stone replied. "We've captured Speaker Zethkar and his entire government. Queen Hisara of the Zelani is also in custody. And the Morvani." Wavezinger attempted to escape but was intercepted by the Centauri Republic fleet. All 3 Council leaders are now prisoners. Jake realized that in less than 24 hours, humanity and its allies had accomplished what had seemed impossible just days before. The Council's reign of terror was over, but as reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy, Jake began to understand that victory in the war was only the beginning. Now they faced the much more complex challenge of building a new galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. The galaxy was free, but freedom was just the first step toward the future that humanity and its allies wanted to create. 1 year after the fall of the Galactic Council, Jake Morrison stood before the largest gathering of sentient beings in galactic history. Representatives from over 800 species filled the massive assembly hall that had been built on the neutral world of Haven, chosen specifically because it had never been controlled by any single species. The first galactic assembly was humanity's attempt to create something that had never existed before, a truly democratic galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination. Jake had been chosen as the assembly's first speaker, not because humans wanted to control the new government, but because they had initiated the revolution that made it possible. 1 year ago, Jake began, his words being translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. "We discovered that our entire understanding of galactic history had been built on lies. Today we gathered to write a new chapter based on truth, cooperation, and mutual respect." In the audience, Jake could see representatives of species that had been hidden for thousands of years, alongside delegates from worlds that had only recently learned about their true history. The diversity was staggering, and Jake felt humbled by the responsibility of helping to unite them all. Admiral Rachel Stone sat in the front row with the other military leaders who had made victory possible. Beside her were the former Council leaders, Speaker Zethkar of the Vorthak, Queen Hisara of the Zelani, and Wavezinger of the Morvani. They were no longer prisoners, but they were also no longer rulers. Their fate would be decided by this assembly. "The question before us," Jake continued, "is not how to punish those who committed crimes in the past, but how to build a future that ensures such crimes can never happen again." The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Species after species stood to share their stories of oppression under Council rule. The Kithara Confederation spoke of having their technological development suppressed for millennia. The Solari Collective described how their cultural achievements had been erased from official histories. Dozens of smaller species told of being forced to serve as slaves or being driven from their home worlds. But the most powerful testimony came from unexpected sources. Several species that had been council allies stepped forward to admit their complicity in maintaining the oppressive system. "We knew the truth," admitted Ambassador Kryn of the Altarian Empire. "We knew that humans had not always been a young species. We knew that the archaeological evidence on our worlds told a different story than what the Council claimed. But we remained silent because we benefited from the existing power structure." Jake was impressed by the courage it took to make such admissions. Building a new galactic civilization would require not just punishing the guilty, but forgiving those who were willing to change. Dr. Lisa Carter had spent the year working with archaeological teams throughout the galaxy, uncovering the true history that had been suppressed for so long. She presented her findings to the Assembly with the help of Dr. Marcus Webb and other historians from the hidden colonies. "What we have learned," Dr. Carter reported, "is that the galaxy was once home to a much more diverse and cooperative civilization than what we see today. Humans were not the only advanced species 12,000 years ago. They were part of a community that included hundreds of different civilizations, all working together to explore the universe and share knowledge." The holographic displays she activated showed reconstructed images of ancient galactic society. Cities where multiple species lived and worked together. Research stations where beings from dozens of worlds collaborated on scientific projects. Trade networks that connected thousands of civilizations in peaceful cooperation. "This is what the Council destroyed," Dr. Carter concluded. "Not just human civilization, but the entire foundation of galactic cooperation. Their rule was based on preventing any species from becoming strong enough to challenge their dominance." Amy Rogers, who had become the Assembly's chief archaeologist, presented evidence from newly discovered sites throughout the galaxy. "We estimate that over 300 advanced civilizations were eliminated during the Council's rise to power. Most were destroyed so completely that we are only now rediscovering evidence of their existence." The testimony continued for days, but gradually the Assembly began to reach consensus on several key points. First, the old system of council rule would be permanently dissolved. Second, a new democratic system would be established based on equal representation for all species. Third, a new organization would be created to preserve and protect archaeological and historical evidence throughout the galaxy. The most difficult question was what to do with the former council leaders. Speaker Zethkar, Queen Hissara, and Wavezinger had been directly responsible for maintaining a system that had oppressed billions of beings for thousands of years. "They committed genocide," argued Captain Roy Bennett during one of the justice hearings. "Entire species were wiped out on their orders. How can we simply forgive that?" But Admiral Stone offered a different perspective. "Punishing them won't bring back the civilizations they destroyed, and executing them would make us no better than they were." The debate over justice continued for weeks, but eventually the Assembly reached a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of execution or imprisonment, the former council leaders would be required to spend the rest of their lives helping to rebuild what they had destroyed. Speaker Zethkar would work with archaeological teams to locate and restore sites that the Vorthak had buried or destroyed. Queen Hissara would help rebuild the infrastructure of worlds that had been damaged by Zilani occupation. Wavezinger would assist in recovering historical records that had been hidden in the deep oceans of Morvani worlds. "Justice without mercy is just revenge," Jake explained to the Assembly. "But mercy without justice is just weakness. This sentence requires them to spend their lives making amends for what they destroyed." The former council leaders accepted their sentences without protest. Speaker Zethkar spoke for all three when he addressed the Assembly. "We ruled through fear because we were afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if other species became as advanced as we were, they would treat us as we had treated them. We destroyed cooperation because we could not imagine a galaxy where different species could coexist as equals." The First Galactic Assembly concluded with the signing of the Galactic Charter, a document that established the principles of the new civilization: equal representation for all species, protection of cultural and archaeological heritage, cooperative exploration and scientific research, and most importantly, a commitment to never again allow any single group to dominate the galaxy. Jake was elected as the first president of the Galactic Federation, but the position had limited power in a term of only 5 years. The new government was designed to prevent any individual or species from accumulating too much authority. As the representatives prepared to return to their homeworlds, Jake found himself standing on the observation deck of Haven's orbital station, looking out at the stars that humanity had finally returned to claim. Dr. Carter joined him, carrying a datapad containing the preliminary plans for the Great Archaeological Project, an effort to restore the complete history of galactic civilization. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. "This new government, this attempt at galactic cooperation?" Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened since that first humiliating meeting at Nexus Prime. "I think it's our best chance," he said finally. "We've proven that species can work together when they share common goals. The question is whether we can maintain that cooperation when times get difficult. The humans' colonies are already talking about building new settlements," Dr. Carter reported, "not just on empty worlds but as mixed communities with other species. Some of the archaeological sites we're restoring are being turned into educational centers, where young beings from dozens of species can learn about their true history." Jake smiled. That sounded like the kind of future worth fighting for. As ships began departing Haven for their home systems, Jake knew that the real work was just beginning. Building a new galactic civilization would take generations. There would be setbacks and conflicts and moments when it seemed like the old ways of domination and fear might return. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy had hope. Humanity had reclaimed its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through the courage to seek truth and the wisdom to share it with others. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Galactic Federation had begun, and somewhere in the vast expanse of space, new species were taking their first steps toward the stars, confident that they would find cooperation rather than oppression waiting for them among the ancient civilizations of the galaxy. Jake Morrison, descendant of refugees who had hidden on a small world called Earth, had helped to restore the dream of a galaxy where all species could work together in peace. It was, he thought, exactly what his ancestors would have wanted.